Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to a new episode of Great Books in 10 Minutes. By the end of this episode, you will know everything about William Shakespeare's famous play, Romeo and Juliet. Before we start, if you have been getting value out of this channel and you would like to support it, you can now use Venmo or buy me a coffee directly from the links in the description box. Thank you very much. The Romeo and Juliet was first performed sometime before 1579 by Shakespeare's own theatre company, the Lord Chamberlain's Men. And according to the oldest Cordo printed, it was performed regularly to a large crowd and was received with great applause. Today it is one of Shakespeare's most performed plays and the benchmark of tragic love stories. Numerous adaptations have turned Romeo and Juliet into an enduring tale of love that has found its iconic place in almost all cultures and languages. It is safe to believe that the first actor to ever play Romeo was the great Elizabethan performer Richard Burbage, and the boy named Master Robert Goffey was the first actor to ever play Juliet. The main themes of Romeo and Juliet are love, family, hatred, duty, youth, fate, violence, and death. The story of Romeo and Juliet starts during a bloody feud between two noble families in the city of Verona, the Capulets and the Montagues. One day, two servants of the house of Capulet named Samson and Gregory start a street fight with the Montagues men. In the middle of this fight, a Montague kinsman named Benvolio draws his sword to try and stop the confrontation. In response, Tybalt, a member of the Capulet family, draws his sword too and tells Benvolio that he despises even the thought of peace with the Montagues. At this moment, the mob joins the fight, and as the brawl escalates, the two heads of the households enter the scene. Lord Montague and Lord Capulet insist on joining the fight, but their wives stop them. In the middle of the chaos, the Prince of Verona arrives and stops the fight. He then announces that from now on, anyone who disturbs the public peace will be executed. When the mob disperses and the prince leaves with Lord Capulet, Lord Montague and his wife ask their nephew Benvolio if he has any news of their son, Romeo. Benvolio replies that he last saw Romeo outside the city wandering around a grove. The lord and the lady say that their son is not like his old self anymore, and he is often sad and depressed. Benvolio promises his uncle to find out about the reason behind his cousin's melancholy. After a short conversation, Romeo reveals to Benvolio that he is in love with a girl named Rosalind, but she doesn't love him back and has taken a vow of chastity. Benvolio encourages his cousin to look for love among other beautiful girls and forget Rosalind, but Romeo contends that Rosalind is the most beautiful girl in all of Verona and he can't love another one. Next, Lord Capulet is accompanied by a noble kinsman of the Prince of Verona, Paris. During their conversation, Paris reveals his desire to marry the Lord's daughter, Juliet, to which the Capulet happily agrees, but reminds Paris that Juliet is not yet 14 and he must wait for 2 years before she is ready to marry. He then invites Paris to a traditional masquerade at his house and tells him that it will be the perfect opportunity for him to steal Juliet's heart. Lord Capulet then orders one of his servants named Peter to compile a list of noble families and invite them to the feast. Peter, who is illiterate, is worried that he won't be able to finish the job properly. Romeo and Benvolio still argue about Romeo's love for Rosaline and whether he will be able to banish her from his heart. Peter, the Capulet servant, randomly sees the two men in the street and, without knowing that they are from the Montague family, asks them to read the list that he has put together back to him to see if he is missing anyone. When Romeo reads the list, he sees Rosalind's name on it. Peter then leaves while inviting the two gentlemen to the ball, assuming that they are not Montagues. Benvolio persuades Romeo to go to the masquerade and convinces him that this will be the perfect opportunity for him to compare Rosalind to the rest of the beautiful ladies of Verona. Romeo agrees to go, but only because Rosalind will be there. In Capulet's household, after Juliet's nurse goes on and on about the time when little Juliet unknowingly became a part of a sexual joke, Lady Capulet asks Juliet how she feels about getting married and informs her of Paris's interest in her. Juliet tells her mother that she will consider Paris and will look upon him at the feast to see if she could fall in love with him. On the other side, Romeo, Benvolio, and their friend Mercutio have blended in with the rest of the guests and are on their way to the Capulets. Romeo then tells everyone he has a foreboding feeling that his attendance at the party will set in motion things that will bring upon his death. At the Capulet's house, the party is in full swing. Everyone is having a good time when suddenly Romeo's eyes land on Juliet. He asks the servant who the lady is, but the servant replies that he doesn't know. Romeo is so mesmerized by Juliet's beauty that he completely forgets about Rosaline and admits that he did not know what love was until that moment. At this moment, Lord Capulet's cousin, Tybalt, recognizes Romeo's voice and orders his servant to bring him his sword. Lord Capulet overhears Tybalt's conversation with his servant and forbids him to harm young Romeo, reminding him that he is a well-respected young man in Verona, and while he is at his house, he will not allow anyone to harm him. Tybalt grudgingly respects his uncle's wish, but vows to punish the Montagues for this insult. Meanwhile, Romeo has approached Juliet and held her hand. In a beautiful interaction that ensues, he compares Juliet's hands to a holy shrine and tells her that if he has sinned by touching her, he would like to repent from that sin by kissing her. He then kisses her, and Juliet replies that his sin is now on her lips, and Romeo offers to take it back with another kiss. Right at this moment, the nurse arrives and tells Juliet that her mother wants to speak to her. When Juliet leaves, Romeo asks the nurse who Juliet's mother is, and when he finds out that Juliet is a Capulet, he is shocked. As the party comes to an end and the crowd begins to leave the Capulet's house, Juliet asks the nurse to identify a few of the young men in the hope of finding out Romeo's identity. When the nurse tells him that the stranger who she had kissed was Romeo, son of Lord Montague, she is devastated. After the masquerade is over, Romeo, desperate to see Juliet one more time, climbs up the wall of Capulet's property and hides in their garden. Romeo tries to find Juliet's room to see her again. A few moments later, Juliet appears at one of the windows. Romeo listens as she speaks to herself and complains about her luck and the fact that Romeo is a Montague. The girl, surprised by Romeo's sudden appearance, asks him how he managed to get there and tells him that he will get killed if her family found out. Romeo answers that love guided him to her and love will protect him from his enemies. The two then confess their love for each other, and Romeo pledges that he will forever be loyal to her. Suddenly, the nurse calls Juliet. Before leaving, she tells Romeo that she will send a confidant to him tomorrow at 9 in the morning to know if Romeo truly wants to marry her. In the morning, a monk named Friar Lawrence, who is exceptionally good at understanding the natural properties of plants and herbal medicine, is busy collecting flowers when Romeo arrives at his monastery. Romeo tells him that he is over Rosaline and is now madly in love with Juliet. He then begs Friar Lawrence to marry them in secret. The monk at first says Romeo is young and his love is weak and feckless. But when Romeo replies that Rosaline did not love him back and Juliet does truly love him, he agrees to marry the two in the hope of ending the long-lasting feud between their families. Romeo's cousin Benvolio and his friend Mercutio wonder what happened to him last night. Benvolio reveals that they have received a letter from Tybalt, Juliet's cousin, challenging him to a duel. Hearing this, Mercutio goes on a rant about Tybalt's proficiency in sword fighting and his perfect style. As they speak, Romeo arrives, and the moment he walks in, Mercutio begins his ridicule by playing Romeo as a hapless lover, to whose eyes Rosaline is more attractive than all the famous beautiful women in history. He then scolds him for abandoning his friends last night. Amid this conversation, Juliet's nurse arrives, and after a short banter with Mercutio, she tells Romeo that he better not betray Juliet's trust. Romeo reassures her that his intentions toward Juliet are indeed honorable, and then asks the nurse to tell Juliet to go to Friar Lawrence's monastery. The nurse agrees to give the message to Romeo and also make a ladder out of cloth to let Romeo join Juliet on their wedding night. Juliet waits impatiently for her nurse to come back. 3 hours later, she finally arrives, and after a comedic back and forth with Juliet, where she claims she is too tired to tell her what Romeo's response was, Juliet passionately begs her to give her the news. She eventually relays to Juliet that she must meet with her love at Friar Lawrence's confession cell. Romeo and Friar Lawrence await Juliet's arrival. Romeo passionately speaks of his devotion to Juliet and tells the monk that he does not care about any trouble that might arise from their marriage. Friar Lawrence advises Romeo to love moderately and reminds him that violent delights could have violent ends. Next, Juliet arrives, and after a romantic exchange with Romeo, where she claims that her love for Romeo is beyond measure, they get married. Benvolio and Mercutio walk in the streets of Verona. From the other side, Tybalt, accompanied by a few of the Capulet men, walk in, and after seeing the Montague's kinsmen, it demands to speak to one of them. Seeing Tybalt's arrogant attitude, Mercutio begins to provoke him. At this moment, Romeo enters, and Tybalt accuses him of villainy and challenges him to a duel. Romeo kindly addresses Tybalt and tells him that he has a great reason to love him. Then he asks him to sheath his sword until the time that he finds out the reason for Romeo's newfound friendship with him. At this moment, Mercutio draws his sword and starts a fight with Tybalt. In a fateful moment, when Romeo puts himself between the two to stop the fight, Tybalt stabs Mercutio from under Romeo's arm and runs away. Mercutio falls, and before dying, he curses both the Montagues and the Capulets. Romeo, enraged by what just happened and disappointed at himself for refusing to fight Tybalt, complains that Juliet's love has made him effeminate. A few seconds later, Tybalt rushes back into the scene. This time, Romeo draws his sword and after a short fight, kills him. Before they know it, the mob enters the scene and calls for the culprits to be arrested. In the commotion, Benvolio tells Romeo that if he gets captured by the prince, he will surely be executed, and encourages him to run away. Romeo flees the scene while calling himself the Fortune's Fool. At this moment, the prince, accompanied by the Capulets and the Montagues, arrive. Benvolio tries to explain to everyone that Romeo did his best to defuse the situation and avoid the fight, but Lady Capulet accuses him of being a Montague and covering for his family members. The Capulet then asks for Romeo to be executed, to which the prince replies that he will exile Romeo from the city, and if he is ever seen in Verona again, he will be executed. At home, Juliet waits for the night to be with Romeo. Suddenly, the nurse walks in and gives her the news of the fight. The nurse is so agitated that she mixes up her words, which makes Juliet think that Romeo has killed himself. The nurse then explains a bit more, and Juliet thinks that both Tybalt and Romeo have been killed. Finally, when the nurse mourns Tybalt's death at Romeo's hand and tells Juliet of his banishment, Juliet scolds Romeo and curses nature for putting a demonic spirit in Romeo's flesh. The nurse agrees with Juliet and curses Romeo, but Juliet immediately scolds her for rebuking her husband. She then tells her nurse that Romeo's banishment is worse than the death of 10,000 Tybalts. She then laments that with Romeo's banishment she will die a maiden widow. Hearing that, the nurse tells her that she knows where Romeo must be hiding right now, and that she will make arrangements for him to see Juliet for their wedding night. Juliet then gives the nurse her ring to give to Romeo as a token of her unabated love for him. Romeo hides at Friar Lawrence's monastery. The monk tells him that the prince has only banished him from Verona, to which he replies that living without Juliet and far from her is a penalty worse than death. The nurse arrives, and seeing her, Romeo assumes that Juliet must hate her now. He then threatens to stab himself. Friar Lawrence stops him and tells him that he has to be thankful that after such a messy brawl, both he and Juliet are alive. Then the nurse gives Romeo Juliet's ring and tells him that she is still waiting for him for their wedding night. Friar Lawrence devises a plan and advises Romeo that after spending the night with Juliet, he must leave Verona before sunrise and go to Mantua until things calm down and hopefully the prince changes his mind. Next, Lord and Lady Capulet speak to Paris and discuss his marriage to Juliet. Lady Capulet tells Paris that she will get Juliet's answer by tomorrow, and Lord Capulet says that he is sure his daughter will listen to him. Then they agree on the upcoming Thursday as the wedding date. After spending the night with Juliet, Romeo prepares to leave. Juliet tries to convince him that morning is not yet near and that the bird that sings is a nightingale, not the morning bird. Romeo tearfully bids farewell to his love and promises that he will send her a message any chance that he could get. Next, Lord and Lady Capulet enter and tell Juliet that they have promised her to Paris and she has to get ready for her wedding on Thursday. Juliet tells them that she will not marry Paris and her father threatens to disown her. When they leave, Juliet asks the nurse what to do, and the nurse answers that she should go ahead and marry Paris since Romeo will be killed soon anyways. As disappointed as Juliet becomes with her nurse, she pretends to accept her counsel and tells her that she will go to Friar Lawrence's confession. Then she vows to never trust the nurse's counsel and take her own life if the monk is unable to help her. In Friar Lawrence's abbey, Paris speaks to the priest about his upcoming marriage to Juliet and tells him that Juliet's grief for her cousin Tybalt is so severe that her father wants her to marry as soon as possible to distract her. At this moment, Juliet enters. Paris speaks to her in a loving but haughty tone, and Juliet responds to him with utter indifference. Paris leaves, but before that, he kisses Juliet. Juliet then brandishes a dagger and tells the monk that if he doesn't help her avoid getting married to Paris, she will kill herself. The priest devises a plan and tells Juliet to first accept Paris's proposal. Then on the night of her wedding, she must drink a sleeping potion that would take her into a catatonic state and make her look dead. After her family put her to rest in the Capulet family's mausoleum, he will let Romeo know to come and take her to Mantua so they could live together away from their parents and their feud. Juliet agrees to the priest's plan and Friar Lawrence gives her the potion. When Juliet returns home, her household is preparing for the wedding. To her parents' surprise, she consents to marry Paris and apologizes for her earlier behavior. Lord Capulet is so happy that he proposes to move the marriage from Thursday to Wednesday and leaves to give Paris the good news. Next, Juliet asks her mother and her nurse to leave her alone for the night. When they leave, she clutches the potion in her hands and wonders what she would do if the mixture is fake and she has to marry Paris in the morning. Then she doubts the priest and asks herself, what if it is poison and Friar Lawrence is only trying to hide his responsibility in her marriage to Romeo by killing her? Or what if Romeo is late and she goes mad from fear in the tomb? Then she sees a vision of her dead cousin Tybalt and begs him to stop chasing Romeo. At this moment, an impatient Juliet says the name of her lover 3 times and drinks the potion by toasting to Romeo. In the morning, the Capulet household buzzes with activity and happiness. Everyone is preparing for the wedding. Lady Capulet tells the nurse to go and wake Juliet and get her ready because Paris could arrive any moment. The nurse finds Juliet dead and starts to wail. Lord and Lady Capulet rush to Juliet's room and join the nurse in mourning. At this moment, Paris, the bridegroom, enters with Friar Lawrence and a group of musicians. Upon hearing the news, he laments with the Capulets. Then Lord Capulet orders all the preparations for the festivities to be transformed into a funeral. In Mantua, Romeo speaks of a strange dream that in it, Juliet rose him from the dead by kissing him and breathing life back in him. At this moment, his servant Balthazar arrives and gives Romeo the devastating news. Romeo at first doesn't believe him, but when Balthazar insists that he witnessed Juliet's burial with his own eyes, he believes him. Romeo then hastily writes a note to his father and gives it to his servant and tells him that he will be in Verona by night. He then asks Balthazar if Friar Lawrence gave him any letter, to which Balthazar answers no. When his servant leaves, Romeo vows to die with Juliet and buys deadly poison from a wretch at Mantua. At the abbey, Friar Lawrence speaks to Friar John, whom he had sent earlier with a letter to let Romeo know about the plan, and asks him if he could deliver the letter to Romeo. Friar John replies that he could not, because he was forced to quarantine in a house due to a plague, and gives the letter back to the priest. Terrified by the thought of Juliet waking up alone in the tomb, Friar Lawrence sends another letter to Romeo without knowing of his plan to kill himself, and then gets a crowbar to unseal the tomb and save Juliet himself. At night, Paris enters the graveyard with a servant to scatter flowers on Juliet's grave. Suddenly, Romeo walks in with a crowbar. Paris recognizes the young man and believes that he hates the Capulets so much that he has come to disrespect Juliet's and Tybalt's bodies. So he draws his sword, and no matter how much Romeo asks him to leave, he refuses. While they fight, Paris's servant runs to the town to let the prince know about Romeo's return to Verona. After a short fight, Romeo kills Paris. With his last breath, Paris begs Romeo to lay him to rest somewhere next to Juliet in the tomb. Next, Romeo goes into the Capulet's tomb and sees Juliet lying there. He then tells Juliet about his intention of freeing himself and joining her in eternity. Romeo then kisses Juliet, drinks the poison, and dies. At this moment, Friar Lawrence enters the graveyard. The priest rushes inside and finds Romeo and Paris's lifeless bodies lying next to Juliet. Right at this moment, Juliet opens her eyes and wakes. Juliet asks for Romeo, and hearing someone's footsteps, she believes that it is him who is coming to get her. The priest hastily tells her that both Romeo and Paris are dead, and they must hurry and leave or they will be captured by the prince's men and the feuding families. Juliet sees Romeo's dead body close to her and refuses to leave. Friar Lawrence, however, rushes away and leaves the girl alone in the tomb. Seeing her true love dead, Juliet decides to join him. She at first tries to kill herself by drinking the remnants of the poison that Romeo drank, which doesn't work. Hearing the footsteps getting closer and closer, she takes Romeo's dagger and says, "Oh, happy dagger, this is thy sheath," then stabs herself in the heart and dies in Romeo's arms. When the watchmen arrive, they capture Friar Lawrence and Balthazar around the churchyard. Then the prince and the Capulets enter and find Romeo, Juliet, and Paris all dead. After that, Lord Montague arrives and gives the news of his wife's passing from the grief of Romeo's exile. The prince then shows Romeo's body to his father and orders Friar Lawrence to explain what he knows. The priest tells everyone about the unfortunate lovers' secret marriage and their tragic end. At this moment, Balthazar gives the letter that Romeo wrote to his father to the prince, and upon reading it, the prince approves of the friar's account and rebukes the heads of the two families for their childish feud. Devastated by their children's death, the two heads of the families shake each other's hands and end the hostilities. They then each pledge to make a gold statue of Romeo and Juliet to always remind them of that woeful tragedy. Very well, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed my summary of Romeo and Juliet. Please consider subscribing to my channel and liking this video. See you in the next episode.